we've had probably 15 guys say for the first time in their life that they were sexually abused as kids, because it's the first time they felt safe enough to actually talk about it. And some of these guys, they say, I've never told my wife, never told my parents, like anybody. And it does change them. It changes them forever. And you don't know what that ripple effect is, but I know it's huge.
Welcome to the Liberating Humanity podcast. I'm Paul Hutchinson, and I am so excited about this one today. Literally one of my best friends on the planet. And we've done a bunch of undercover operations together, a number of the ones that I've already talked about. Jimmy was there, and we worked so well together. Ironically, it's just because we both were good with people and we could read each other, and Jimmy spoke way better Spanish than me. He didn't hardly speak it at all. And so thank you, Jimmy, for being here today.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I can point to a few moments in my life where really changed kind of the entire trajectory of where my life ended up going. And one of those was, meeting you and starting to go undercover with the different groups. And it really was like just such a pivotal moment in my life. So yeah, honored to be here.
Well, I'm excited. So when we first met, I was speaking at a conference. There was a whole bunch of people there, and I was Paul effing Hutchinson. Right? I have my big ass ego, and I was like, I built this multi-billion-dollar company, and did these undercover work and whatever else. And I had a heart for the philanthropy side, but I was definitely had what I call relationship arrogance. Right? If somebody didn't qualify, if you couldn't write a multi-million-dollar check, I really didn't want to give you my number. Right. Mm. And so, I was invited in to come and speak at this. And a lot of them were smaller business owners and stuff that were there. Of all the hundreds of people that were there, we ended up being super close friends.
Yeah. Well, I think you need to give yourself more credit then. I was, look, anytime you go to a networking event, it is a networking event. You're thinking, okay, who should I network with? And who can, who seems to be where I want to be, who has the most pull. Like, I'm a real estate agent. So I'm always thinking like, okay, you run a big fund with a bunch of people that have money. And so obviously I'm going to want to be friends with you, but it was more than that. Like you did have there was a different vibe with you. You were the one guy in the room wearing a suit. You were the guy that was more professional than anybody else. You definitely had an aura that, was like, okay, I want to get to know what that guy's all about. I didn't know what you were or weren't or anything else, but you definitely stood out to me. And so when you got up and started sharing about your guys' op in Colombia, what was interesting about that is, I don't know if you know how this all ties together. It's kind of crazy, but I was really searching what I was going to do with my life, with God and things like that at that time. And about 3 months before that meeting where you spoke to this group, a friend of mine from high school hit me up and she's like, hey, it's Liz. And I didn't even know which Liz it was. I hadn't talked to her in 12 years, 15 years. And she literally was like, hey, we work at this orphanage down in Haiti. I'd been called, I just have this feeling you need to be there. I keep having this feeling you need to come to Haiti with us. And I'm like, I don't know. When is it? I was kind of not that interested. And she goes, it's this day. It was over New Year's. And I was like, oh, you guys are crazy. I'm not spending my New Year's in Haiti. That's literally what I said. And she's like, well, I'll follow up. And I didn't hear anything for a month or two. And there was another lady in my office, independent of this lady, and they were kind of part of this Christian group. And she came up to me. She goes, hey, I was talking to Liz, and I had the same feeling that you need to come work at this orphanage. And I was like, well, it's over New Year's or whatever. So I just blow it off again. Well, on my way to that meeting to listen to you guys, I didn't know you were speaking, but just to go to that Connect Share meeting, I get a call from the lady and she goes, hey, please pay attention. If there's any signs, I swear to God, this is what she said. She said, if there's anything that calls you or you see, just listen to it. I really think you're supposed to be there. I'm like, okay. And so I go to the meeting and you get up and start talking about rescuing kids that in a lot of orphanage and things like that. I didn't even have any idea. Haiti's still not in the picture. This is just about Colombia. And so I listened to you and I'm like, man, if ever I had a calling. So I hit the lady up. I said, hey, I'm in. I'll come down to Haiti and I'll do the trip with you guys. And it was 10 days in Haiti over basically my Christmas break. And I'm just like, man, what am I doing? All these random people I don't know. I only kind of know the one realtor and kind of know the girl from high school. But after the meeting, I just felt, okay, this has got to be all connected somehow. And so I went up to you and you had about 10 people trying to get your attention. And I said to you, look, man, I want to be a part of this. And you were like, well, there's a lot of people that want to be a part of this, whatever. You kind of blew me off. And I was like, hey, you're a real estate guy. I'm a real estate guy. And you got to go. So how do I do it? and you looked at me and you're like, well, we have this charity event next week. And if you want to go buy a table, they're like $6,000. I'm like, great. Who do I call? I'm in.
I
And
didn't think I was doing that as a full blow
of
off.
course.
I didn't
So,
think anybody in that room could afford to just buy a $6,000 table to come to the event.
yeah. So I was like, I'm in. And so anyway, so I went to that and you and I connected at that event and we start kind of talking a little bit. Well, as I started talking with you simultaneously, I go to this charity thing down in Haiti and it was at Guest Knows Orphanage.
Oh, wow.
That was, and I had no idea. I still didn't know they were connected to OUR. Like I had no recollection of this. I didn't know that these two things were combined. So we start talking and everything. And then I get back and I hear more about the Guardy being, kidnapped. And then I put it all together. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is all connected somehow. And anyway, so that was kind of like, I really believe I was inspired to be at that event when I heard you. And that's why I was so gung ho. Like I'm making this happen. Like it was a, call it
Like a
calling or a prompting or whatever. But
it was a transitionary time in my life. I mean, going on that mission just changed everything. I was on my way to just continuing to build this huge fund, and I was doing some charity work, but seeing that firsthand changed everything for me.
yeah.
And your very first undercover mission was in Mexico, right?
Yeah. So I went to Haiti to go do one with you guys. We were going. I actually, after going to that orphanage, I was inspired, and I decided to take a group of my friends there.
Okay.
And I planned it around when you guys were going, so that I could piggyback. And I was staying in Haiti to then work with you. So my friends all went back, and I stayed there.
Okay.
So that was supposed to be my first op was in Haiti. I took 14 of my friends, and we all went and volunteered at the orphanage. It was amazing. But it ended up getting canceled. I think something went wrong and so that was technically supposed to be my first op, but my first one I really went was in Cancun.
And we had, it wasn't a huge rescue, 16 victims on that one, but it was the beginning of something super special, and we did a lot after that. We both had some experiences, and I'll tell mine, and then I want you to tell yours about We Are the They. I remember I was going on one of the undercover missions, and I was dating a girl, and she was kind of bugged. She was like, you know what? I don't feel comfortable with you going. She had 2 little kids of her own. She said, I've got 2 kids, and we were starting to get serious in our relationship. And she said, you should just stay here and just be a dad to these kids. Why are you going to do that? And her 2 boys were playing with a little girl that was in the neighborhood. And I think this little girl was named Jessica. And I said, Jessica, she was in the living room. And I said, hey, come over here. Brought her over to the kitchen table. And I said, how old are you? She said, I'm 10, almost 11. I said, that's wonderful. I said, what do you do for fun? She said, well, I like to sing. I like to dance. I like to, ride my bike. I said, that's awesome. I said, what do you want to be when you grow up? She said, I don't know, maybe be a dancer, maybe be a nurse. Beautiful dreams for a beautiful 11-year-old girl. And I sent her away to play with the other kids. And I turned to my girlfriend at the time and I said, the children that those traffickers showed me while I was down there were her age. And if I don't go back, they could be sold to somebody else. They deserve to grow up to want to be a nurse, to want to be a singer. They deserve to be in a safe place, to have those dreams like she has. That was a big transition in my relationship with her. And she realized, it doesn't matter if it's my kids or somebody else's. These are kids. And even if the parents don't know where they are, they don't have the resources that we do, it doesn't mean they love them any less, And so you had a similar experience in a conversation with somebody you were dating that kind of turned into something huge that you're doing now. So
yeah, well, it was after I think it was our 3rd or 4th op we did together. It was our most dangerous one we ever did. It was the takedown was so satisfying because they were really, I always said there's bad guys with the trafficking stuff and then there's evil guys, right? Like the bad guys are like they're trafficking somebody that they have access to. Maybe they did it for money, like, or maybe they were just offered to find somebody and so they went and did it. That's a bad dude. The evil dudes had an organization set up. This is what they did. They trafficked kids. And this was one of those cases. And, I remember coming back the first time we went on the op, coming back from that, I remember telling my roommate, at the time, Travis, I'm like, dude, I don't think I'm going to do this anymore. This is actually more dangerous than I thought. If these dudes had any inkling that we were undercover, we were dead.
For sure.
But then we went back 2 weeks later to do the takedown. And I mean, it was amazing, right? We took these guys out. We, were able to have the rescue. And I always looked at, because one thing I hated about the rescues is we never got to see the people after we were arrested and taken off. I never got to have that experience of like actually seeing the kids once they were rescued. They went with the people that were taking care of them for aftercare and all that. But the one thing I always held my hat on was like, how many kids did we rescue that just never had to get into this? So every time there was a trafficker taken out, I mean, how many people did that help, right? Like, I think we took out an 8th grade school teacher one time, and I mean, she was using her position to lure people into that world. It's like, how many girls did we help that never had to go down that road because of that one trafficker that we were able to take out? Yeah. And so for me, that was super satisfying. I remember I got home and my girlfriend at the time picked me up, and we're driving home, and I'm telling her all about it. And it was a dangerous op. It was scary. It was crazy and everything else. And she pulls over and she goes, "Hey, I got to talk to you. I actually don't want you to do this anymore." I was like, "What are you talking about? Like, did you not just hear what I just said? We just rescued these kids." And she goes, "I know, but it's super dangerous. It's a bad environment." I was like, "I know, but like, this is gonna be part of my life's mission now." And she goes, "Well, I don't get it. Like, why can't they just go do it?" And without even thinking, I said, "There is no they. We are the they." And when I said that, Paul, it shot like shivers down my spine. I was like, oh my gosh, what a beautiful thing. Like, we are the they. And so that became my mantra. I got it tattooed on my arm. And then, a couple of years ago when I started my men's coaching program, that became the obvious name, because too often in life, we're always wondering for somebody else to come do it. And the truth is like, no, there is nobody else. Like, we are the they. We have to be the ones that step up and do it.
I love that. I love that. In fact, when you were launching We Are the They, you had your birthday party about the same time.
Yeah, you spoiled me. Like, it was my 40th birthday party. It was kind of my launch party for it, because I wanted to kind of combine them and kind of do a test run a little bit of like, how would this go if I do some of these ideas that I have? So we went out to Moab and we did this giant rope swing, and which has kind of become a staple of my program. And in that, I show up and you had taken your giant 18-wheeler or whatever and wrapped it with my company logo, We Are the They, and everything else. And we hadn't even launched yet. It looked like we were a multi-million-dollar brand. And so that was pretty awesome.
I'm super excited to see everything that you're doing with We Are the They. I watch your updates and how many men have transformed their lives, because we sit back and expect somebody else to step up to the plate. Mm-hmm. And it's really up to us, and I think that's a message for everything. People think, oh, we're going to have these white hats in the political arena that are going to fix our country. No, we've got to figure out how to fix our country. Most religions believe that there's going to be 1,000 years of peace after God. I don't think God's going to just come and wave his hand and we're all going to be nice to each other.
Right.
We've got to figure out how to get over our differences. We have to figure out how to really step up to the plate. We are the ones that have to take responsibility for transforming our lives and living a life of integrity, and be responsible for how we treat other people. So go a little bit deeper on what you teach. What are your principles, and how do you help men become all that they can be?
Yeah, I mean, the origin of this was almost 5 years ago now. I'd been a real estate agent for 15, 20 years, and, I'd been one of the top agents in the country at times. That particular year, I had just sold the most expensive home ever in Utah. It was $32.5 million. And I was the number one agent in Utah that year, as far as like, how many income and all those kinds of things. So I was crushing. I was at the top of my game. And I actually was doing a plant medicine ceremony, and it came to me clear as day, like, you need to do something more impactful. You're done doing this now. And it really wasn't that satisfying anymore. I mean, it was nice, the money, all that kind of stuff, but it wasn't like much was changing. And so I kind of started just playing with this idea of like, all right, well, what would I do if I didn't do this? And I really worked on it for a couple of years, and ultimately decided, it was interesting. I was originally going to do these big adventure trips, which I still do in the program. I just got back from Africa with 23 guys. Took 70 guys to run with the bulls last year in Spain. Like, we go do some crazy trips. We went and swam with the sharks in the Bahamas, went to Iceland. But what I realized was that it wasn't supposed to be this adventure trip. That's what I thought it was going to be. I was going to get all the influencers and have them, come and, tell their backstories and sell it to Netflix. That was my idea that I had. But I hired this girl, her name's Bea. She's awesome. and she was dating Tim Ferriss at the time. And so I was like, okay, I need to hire her and ask her how to help me. And like part of me obviously was like, and then, obviously I'll figure out how to get Tim to be a part of this. And so we're doing this really beautiful coaching session / meditation. And she says to me, she's like, Jimmy, Tim doesn't need this. His friends don't need this. Who needs this? And she said, let's meditate on that thought. Who needs this? And it came so clear to me. I was like, oh, my friends had just asked me. We'd had a big dinner with like 10 of my close friends, and they'd been like, Jimmy, you need to throw an event for us, dude. We want to go do something fun, a trip. Just put it together. We'll all come. We'll pay whatever. I was like, man, that would be perfect. And then I was like, and then I was getting a lot of people that were reaching out to me on Instagram at that time. I just released my book, which is called You End Up Where You're Heading. And it really takes you through the hero's journey and how to be the hero of your own story. A lot of like what we were just talking about. And so I had a lot of guys that were reaching out, and they kept saying the same thing though. They kept saying either I feel like I'm, not really living my life. I want to do more, or it was, where do I find a group of friends like you guys have? That was the main thing I kept getting asked. And I was like, and so when she asked me who needs this, I was like, oh my gosh, I know exactly what this is. This is a group where I can help men. It's a men's group, and I can help men connect on a deeper level, become friends and everything. And that was really the moment. That was again in coming up on 3 years this summer. And so I was like, hey, I'm all in on this. And so basically just doubled down, went all in on it. And what I did, and so this is where I'm going with all this, is I was like, what am I going to teach? What's this all going to be about? Right. And, you have your own insecurities. You have your own imposter syndrome. You're like, well, what am I going to teach people? There's a lot of people are richer than me, better looking than me, and better shape than me. I'm not even married. Like all these things that keep cropping in. You're like, that would disqualify a normal human that you would think. But I kept thinking like, well, no, I know how to help men connect and become friends. And that's what I can do. That's what I'll focus on. So, but I started thinking like, all right, well, what are these pivotal moments of my life that changed me? And so I started thinking of all these times I went to Pelican Bay Prison and got to, as an entrepreneur, and got to teach the prisoners there and have these beautiful experiences that we had. And then I had a moment with some of our other friends, at one of our houses, and this moment where one of our friends called our other friend into integrity, and it was life-changing. I was the best hour of my life watching this. And I went through my own path of like, all right, what have been the impactful moments? What have been the things that changed me? And so I just kind of took the best of everything I'd done. And, I'd been on a path of self-development my whole life, but really had dug in the last 10 years. I mean, I hired the top coaches in the country, been to every seminar, every conference, every mastermind. And so I just took the best of everything I'd learned, all the books I'd read, and I said, I'm going to throw it all into this program. And I know how impactful it was for me. And so hopefully it will be for other people.
That's super cool. And I've come to a few of the like the excursions that you've done, and not only are you, it's not just a seminar type of whatever, but you're doing experiences to help people overcome their own fears. I mean, I remember we were rappelling off of these cliffs, and a handful of your guys were having a really hard time, but it was so beautiful having all of them come together and create that healthy masculine support for them and help them overcome their own insecurities. And that win, you win over your fear of coming off a cliff. Now you can win over your fear of other things that are really important in life.
Yeah. So, it's a lot of people get stuck because, they, for better or worse, like humans don't like to change. They, until the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of changing, they're not going to do anything. And so I said, all right, how can I help people work past that, that moment where we just get stuck or whatever else? And so, yeah, there's a lot of things in my group. We jump off these giant cliffs, and we walk on hot coals. We swim with tiger sharks. Like we just do some crazy things that gets you. It's like, if I can get you to do that, then I can probably get you to have a tough conversation with your kid who started smoking pot or whatever, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so ultimately I put a lot of that into the program, but then I said, I wanted this, to create real change, because that's what it was all about. Like there's a lot of programs out there, there's a lot of coaching groups, and people don't change. And I've now led 2 different groups through my full program. And I can tell you, Paul, there is no other men's group out there that is as powerful as this one. It doesn't work the same. Like we see and experience true change. And my favorite thing is the wives that keep coming up to me, and saying like, you changed our marriage, like by just helping my husband, like with this or this or this or this. But here's the beauty of it. You can't change anybody. All I do is I create a space that's so fun that you don't want to miss it. And then once you're there, all I do is make the container safe enough so that you're inspired to want to change yourself. And that's how change happens. Anytime you start trying to change somebody, you expect somebody to be different, you ask somebody to do something, it's just not going to work. We've seen this a million times. This is where all the frustration of the world comes in. But if you can get people in a room and just share your own experience, and if you want people to be vulnerable, guess what you do? You be vulnerable. If you want people to be authentic around you, guess what you do? You be authentic. If you want people to be into integrity, you share your story and show them how you got into integrity and all these different things. And so that's all we did, is we just showed basically this container, and guys are popping out of their seats left and right at my event because they finally feel safe enough to share these things that men are just holding in, and it's never been okay to share. And one thing I know about human beings is they will do whatever they need to feel safe. And that can look really awful sometimes. That's where everything comes from, but that can look really beautiful sometimes. But whatever you can do to help men just feel safe in that container, that's where the transformations take place.
I love that. And, I've realized after 10 years of doing ops and undercover work, et cetera, I came to an understanding that we were never going to fix the problem fighting fire with fire. Yes, we're making a powerful impact in the lives of those kids. Yes, we're putting bad guys in jail, but the problem is that those kids were already victimized. They were already in that situation. What if we could back it up and figure out how to raise global consciousness? What if we could figure out how to fix the problem before the kids were ever victimized? Take away the demand. Now, realize this is a small percentage of the population that are going to do something like that, but the majority of those guys who are walking down that road are holding childhood trauma of their own. They were raped themselves as kids. Now, that doesn't justify it. The majority of people, the majority of men who dealt with childhood abuse and everything else, the majority of them grow up to be protectors, right? There's no way that that's ever going to get passed on to another child. However, there is a small percentage that, if not given the love and the help and the healing that they need, will pass that trauma on. Either just in forms of anger or, verbal abuse, physical abuse, or in some cases, the sexual abuse of a child, right? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not a pedophile sympathizer. We put our lives in danger to ensure that guy never hurts innocents again. However, what if we could have caught him at 22 years old before he ever crossed that road, right? And figured out how to help him heal through his stuff. Now, we don't know who that's going to be. So why not take a broad swath and say, okay, I'm going to take 20 guys and I'm going to help them overcome their own insecurities. I'm going to help them work through their own childhood. Whatever it is, I believe that approach is truly saving more children than we ever did in going out and rescuing them. I really do. And it's not just the trafficked children. It's their own kids, right? It's their own kids. And they may not be sexually abusing them, but if they're not in integrity themselves and they're going home after work and they're yelling at their wife and they're yelling at their kids and they're treating them like shit, those kids are going to grow up having similar emotional issues. And so you are literally rescuing hundreds and hundreds of children by doing the work that you are with the men.
With the work now, I've had, probably over 15 guys that have gotten up, because we do a lot of time to share after we do like breath work or do different things to kind of help open up the container in this space for people to share. And we've had probably 15 guys say for the first time in their life that they were sexually abused as kids, because it's the first time they felt safe enough to actually talk about it. And some of these guys, they say, I've never told my wife, never told my parents, like anybody. And it does change them. It changes them forever. And you don't know what that ripple effect is, but I know it's huge, right? I mean, one of the problems I always had with the undercover work is, like you said, it was like, I think it needed to happen. Like there needed to be the spotlight put on it. And I think that was, the beauty of Sound of Freedom and OUR and CLF and all that, was that originally, like, it did need to be exposed that this is even a thing. But if you really dive into like how much change can you make when you're just doing these one-off ops, I always felt like, well, what happened to these kids? And we never found out. Like nobody ever, to this day, I can't get any information on that. And so like that would always bother me. I know that there was aftercare and I know there was people there, but I don't know what they did.
And they wouldn't let us as operators connect with them because they what they were telling us is, that's going to re-traumatize the kids and whatever. And so, the later stuff when we had Vanessa helping with some of the stuff that was done in Ecuador and others, now we know, but yeah, those earlier ones. And
no, it was literally, we never found out what happened. Yeah, those were the ones that I was, a part of.
What's beautiful about the guys that are coming out saying, hey, this happened, statistically, the guys who are passing on that trauma are the ones that are holding it inside. I've heard numbers as high as 1 in 3 guys who were raped as children end up being contact offenders. But those are the ones who never say anything. right? Or holding it in. The simple act of being in an environment where you're comfortable and talking about it, that one thing alone takes the chances of them passing that on down to almost nothing.
Yeah.
So
Well, and just, and how many other people feel free or safe to be able to talk about it eventually because these guys came out, right?
Yeah.
And you got guys like Bedros Keuilian and Steve Weatherford, some of these big influencer guys now that have come out and said they were abused as kids. And because they've been open about it, it really, I think, helps a lot of other people to be able to go to that space. I know, I had both those guys come talk to my group, and multiple people went up to them afterwards and thanked them and allowed them to kind of, feel even more safe with their story. And so, yeah, I love this different angle. And I think for me, it's like you can put your time and attention to a lot of things, and whatever you do is probably going to, whatever you focus on, you're going to be able to affect in a big way. And for me, it's truly been the gift of my life. I mean, it's these messages every single day. We have a documentary we made about this. I was trying to really give people an idea of what is actually happening at these events. And it's so hard to explain if you're not there. And so we made this documentary. We show 5 or 6 of these different stories. And so if you're listening to this and you want to check it out, it's wattvid.com. You just go to wattvid.com. You can see it's about an hour 20 documentary. But we have a guy in there. We have a gay guy, for example, that joined our group. He came out 27 years ago. This guy's been out forever. He's in his, young 50s. But he said that he hated being a part of that community because it was just no more morality. And he really wanted to have a family and kind of go that route. And he said this was the first time he's ever felt in his entire life that everyone in the room wanted him there, was in our group, right? And that meant so much to me because, growing up in Utah, it was like, that was a no-no. Like, it was just kind of very frowned upon. And for that guy to feel so safe in our room. We had another guy, he's a very successful business guy, but, just had so much shame and thought if anyone ever knew who I really was, they wouldn't love me. And we'd take this guy through this exercise. Another guy whose brother died. We had another, guy who hadn't talked to his daughter in years, and he, connects with her and all these different things. But that's really how, like you said, like, I think that's the real work. That's the healing, but it's also the hardest work. I mean, I've never worked harder in my life, Paul. I'll be honest. Like, it's not easy, and it's all emotional. And so, it's real estate. If somebody didn't get the house, or if somebody's house wasn't selling, yeah, it can be emotional, but eventually it's going to sell. Eventually they'll find something to buy. So there's not this pressure. But I mean, I get the big calls. I'm coaching several hundred guys now. And so you just get really big calls. There's always big issues to solve and to handle and to help. And I love it because it really does make such a difference. And I'll say this, when I was starting my group, I didn't know if it was going to sell out. Like, I've actually just launched my 5th group right now, yesterday, and we're about halfway sold out. It's been a day, and I'm hoping, we'll have it sold out in the next week or 2, but it's hard to get. It's not the cheapest program out there, and it's, it's a full commitment. And so I was just hoping we could get 50 guys in that original group. And I hit, send on my Instagram, Facebook, and I had 147 people applied in less than 8 hours. Wow. And I just realized, oh my gosh, like, there is such a crazy desire for this. Yeah. And, and so ultimately, seeing the need that was out there, it's like, oh, wow. And so I had to literally stop everything else I was doing, my real estate, my flip business, my other coaching, to just focus on this one thing. But, when I was picking the 50 guys, I went through their Instagrams and I went through their Facebooks, and I wanted to see their families. I wanted to see their kids. I wanted to see who this was going to affect the most. And that's how I figured out who I was going to put into the group. And it was interesting because as I was doing it, I kind of had this, this feeling. It was like, damn, like, how different would have my life been if my dad could have found a group like this? Because my dad was a great guy for the most part, but he had some trauma that he never talked about. It was never safe. In fact, 2 years ago, we finally sat down for about 7-8 hours one night, and he opened up about a lot of stuff. And I asked him as he was sharing some of these things that he'd held in, and I said, Dad, when was the last time you shared this with somebody? He said, I've never been able to share this with anyone. And I just kept thinking, like, this is the room my dad needed. Like, so if I could create that for these kids that don't have to have some of the trauma that I did, growing up, and some of the just the things that were difficult to work with, is like, what is the value of that? And that's really been an inspiration for me for pushing and making this group everything I can, because I always see myself, that little 6 or 10 or 12-year-old kid that, man, if only my mom and dad had been able to find a group like this.
That's beautiful. I'm just going to say this, Jimmy. You are, if not the number one, within the top 2 or 3 most influential people in my transition of my life. And I want to publicly thank you and tell you how you were so impactful in my life. Um, and number of years ago, we were in the same energy, right?
Party mode,
We
yeah.
were party mode,
Yeah.
and in this pinnacle of success that everybody is looking for, right? You were there, I was there. I had 4,000 employees of the company that I helped to found, but when I retired, right? I mean, we are managing billions of dollars. I had a basketball court in my basement. We had parties at my house where all the NBA players and all these beautiful women were there, and this was the energy that was going on. However, and we're rescuing kids. I mean, what better story do you have? And from a compassionate standpoint, everybody sees, wow, what a great guy, he's doing all of this. Inside, I was broken,
Mm.
and it was a self-created trauma. I wasn't raped as a child, but my ego was so out of control. And part of it was healthy. You have to have that kind of an ego to be able to jump on the phone and call somebody from the Marriott family and say, hey, invest in my fund. You've got to have some of that energy, that self-confidence needs to be there. But when it is to the point where I was on my second marriage headed for a second disaster, right? I didn't have a healthy relationship with my children.
Mm.
All of the things that were really, truly important in life. Everybody saw me at the top of this pyramid. I'm the pinnacle. I want to be like Paul someday. I want to have those parties and whatever else. But deep inside, I wasn't as successful as I really could have been in all the important areas. And so you called me up, and I remember your words. You said, Paul, do you trust me? And I said, yeah. It was you and Andy, and you said, do you trust us? And I said, yeah, I trust you with my life. That we go into some pretty dangerous places. And you said, we're doing this. It was kind of a healing type of a thing. And my ego self was, I don't need to heal anything. What do I need to heal, right? And you said something. I think you used the word transformation or something in there. I thought, okay, I'm good with transformation. I don't need to heal anything, but maybe I'm gonna be better at something, right? And you invited me to what became the number one most transformational experience of my life, which was an introduction to plant medicine.
Mm.
Now, understand this. I grew up LDS. Alcohol was off limits, tea and tobacco. I mean, heck, even caffeine. Anything that was going to alter my mind in any way, that was going to send me to hell, right?
Mm.
That was kind of my mindset. And so I had never really tried anything. And so when I get introduced to this idea of these power plants, these psychedelic tools, and I was a little bit hesitant, but I trusted you guys. And what happened in my life was, number one, it helped me energetically take a step back and see myself for the destructive path that I was truly on.
Mm.
And not from a FU standpoint, but from a self-love standpoint of learning to love the real version of me, I was able to see life from a whole different light and see the destructive nature of where I was going. And I remember one of the other really impactful moments with you was, again, at one of these journeys. It was a small one. It was just you and me and Andy, I think. And I had let go of a lot of that stuff. But in that space, here we are, our ego walls are down, and we're vulnerable, but you loved me enough to really be honest with me. And when I was talking about, hey, I'm glad I'm not that guy anymore. Did you know at one time I had this and this and this? I was with these girls at the same time and whatever. And you said, no, stop right there. Stop right there. I said, what? He said, you said your energy is wrong, Paul. You're talking about it in a boastful way, as if you're not that man anymore. Let it go. Not just physically, but energetically, let that go and step into that new version of yourself. And that was probably the most powerful conversation I had in years, because nobody dared talk to me like that. It was Paul F. Hutchinson, right? I built all this stuff, but you loved me enough to talk to me saying, Paul, no, that's not you.
Well, one thing that I was always grateful for is I had friends that were just really honest with me, just really would always tell me what I needed to hear, not what I wanted to hear. And I remember the first time we were in Cancun and we did that takedown, me and you ended up in the back of the cop car handcuffed together. And, you were kind of trying to figure out what you're going to do with your fiance or girlfriend or whatever it was at the time. And if you're going to marry her. And I said, hey, man, I got to be honest with you for a second. You can't marry this woman. And you looked at me and I was like, I'm serious, man. This is going to ruin your life. You can't marry this woman. Like, love her and like whatever, but you can't marry her. Like, this is a disaster. And she was, God bless her, but she was a disaster. And I just was like, and you looked at me and you said, well, no one's ever that honest. And I said, Paul, no one's probably ever loved you enough to be that honest. I said, I don't need to be your friend if being your friend means I have to kiss your ass. And you kind of gave me permission. You said, wow, that's really powerful, man. Like, thank you. And you still married her. Like, you didn't listen to me. But like,
lasted a year.
Of course.
It cost me all shit.
You literally didn't invite me to the wedding because you knew I was disapproved of it. But no, and the point was, and I kind of just, that's how I've always been with my friends. Like the guys that, and when somebody's just telling you what you want to hear, somebody's kissing your ass. And so like in that moment, yeah, I mean, you were telling the story as if you'd healed from it, but you were saying it with an energy that was just off. I said, hey, dude, stop. Like, because again, I want my friends to be their best. Like you're a representation of me. You're a walking billboard of who I am as well, right? It's like, in my coaching program, we have tough conversations with guys. Like I've had to kick a few guys out of the group because it's like ultimately, and each time I did that, it was like, I'm going to love you in a way that no one else would. And because of that, I'm going to take away something you really want, which is this brotherhood, because sometimes like we think love looks like just holding you and supporting you, and it can, and it does. But sometimes love's just telling somebody like, hey man, this ain't it. And I've had, my buddy Travis Prince, Travis very well. He does this so well. He'll call me out, and my buddy Cameron and a few of the other ones, they just, you guys are good at that. But like, I so value people because I'm not trying to be right. I'm trying to get it right. And if you're just surrounded by people that are always telling you what you want to hear, you've got a problem on your hands. And thank God I have people in my world that, have been willing to do that for me. And it helps me course correct. Like I have a couple siblings that, to be honest, I don't have as good a relationship right now as I would love to because, and they're, they don't like that I talk about plant medicine. It's one of the things that has come up. And, it's two things. I'm like, I kind of am grateful for them because they keep me in check always. Like I'm always checking myself like, okay, like, am I doing, like, I have to ask myself tougher questions. Like, wait, is this wrong? Am I doing this the wrong way? And to be honest, when we first discovered plant medicine, it was like such a game changer. It is a absolute, if you have trauma and things that you're not seeing, it's going to change your life. We know this. It's 78% of the people that do it say it's the most profound experience of their life. It was for you. It was for me. And I had gotten reckless with how I was sharing it. And like my brothers not approving of me essentially caused me to reflect and go, wait, why do I need to be the voice of this? I don't need to be the loudest person in the room about this. I don't need to be, there are consequences. And I saw some of those start to happen. People that weren't ready for it, people that didn't honor the medicine, or people that just, took it too far, did too much at once, all these different things. And all of a sudden you go, oh, this isn't like, I don't need to be the person always speaking about this thing. And it was my brothers like really giving me, I call it tough love. Like it comes off like, doesn't feel good, doesn't feel like love, but that's what it is. And it just causes me to check myself and go, okay, make sure you're in alignment on this. Make sure you really, believe what you're saying. And as you're kind of going through that, because you are so excited. I mean, it is a life-changing experience, but you also need people to help rein it in. And I think we do that for each other really well.
We do. And, and on that note, we talked about this at dinner the other night where in the beginning, I would tell people, look, this stuff is super powerful. I'm not going to judge you, the guys who are doing it recreationally, whatever, but now I kind of do. And here's why, and this is my personal experience. I see those tools that plant medicine, I see it as, I'm just going to call it sacred, right? It's a powerful transformational tool that when used in the wrong hands, in the wrong environment, with the wrong group, with the wrong energy, it can be detrimental. These we have a friend whose wife said, I microdosed some mushrooms once when I was at this rock concert, this rave type of thing, and it screwed me up for the next few weeks, and it was super heavy. Why? It's because the medicine has the ability not only to help you really go on this journey of self-reflection and really see where you're going, but it also opens up I'm gonna call it it thins out the veil, right? It helps to connect with your higher self, with divinity, with God, with it in a beautiful way. In fact, I remember the very first time I told my parents that I had done it, and I told her how beautiful my connection was with my creator through that. And she's like, "You only feel close to God when you're on drugs?" I'm like, "No, mom." It helps to break down all of these barriers that we put up in front of ourselves and really tune into our heart and to our spirit, our soul, etc. However, because of the fact that it opens up that connection to that spiritual side, if you're in an environment with negative people, with a rave thing, with an orgy thing going on, all this negative energy, it's going to do the opposite.
Mm.
And so having a healthy reverence for the tools and using them only in a space where you have the right container, meaning you've got other people who love you and support the highest version of you. Just like, we were in that space and you loved me enough that you waited until I was there in that malleable point and you said, "No, Paul, that is not where," and that was so powerful because of the fact that me being on the medicine at the time,
Yeah.
I was so open to those walls were down and you lovingly helped
Well,
me
that's what it
transform.
is. I mean, it's a cheat code for relationship and relationship healing because you can be honest with each other and you feel each other's energy. And your ego's not there to block it to protect you. It just allows you to kind of take it. And then you go, oh, they're not trying to hurt me because your
Yeah.
ego always steps up ready to fight, everybody. So that's what I'm saying. And so anyway, so I think that is the beauty of those conversations. I've had, you know, people that, close to me that have done, some of the plant medicine with their spouse, for example. And one guy, close friend of mine, and he's actually still active, super active Mormon guy, LDS, but he'd had some trauma. He'd been abused as a kid and he wanted to kind of get over it. And so he decided to try that. And in that journey space, he was able to talk to his wife about it for the first time. And he wrote me the most beautiful text you've ever seen just because he, found out about it from me essentially. And that's where I go back and forth. It's like, oh, this is so healing and it's so beautiful done right. Right. And so it's like one of those things that I'll always be an advocate. I'll always participate in it, frankly, because it just is such a cheat code to be able to have the tough conversations. And I think what we've discovered as friends is we start having those conversations even not in the journeys now. Like
Exactly.
it breaks it down so that you can there's just depth. All my relationships now have a lot of depth. And it's the people that can't have those tough conversations with me that our relationships just aren't what they used to be because I don't want the surface stuff anymore. I don't want to just talk like pretend like everything's okay. Like if you're going through something, let's talk about it. If I'm going through something, I want to be able to talk about it. And that's really the beauty. 95% of any relationship is the real true depth. And so, yeah, it's like for me, it's just really opening my eyes to which relationships I have depth to and to avoid just those, the bullshit.
You touched on something. It sheds light on a lot of key things, but the real transformation happens with the integration, right?
Mhm.
And this is why having that experience with a brotherhood, with people who your brothers who really love and care about you, or your spouse, etc. You in that space now you can get to the point where you know what self-love is. You know what living in the presence feels like. You know what letting go of that anger is. You know how it feels to release that childhood trauma. You can feel it, and energetically you're there. It's like this start and this finish line on this maze, and it lights right up. You know exactly how to get to that space. Well, then a day later, a week later, a month later, now that's where the work is, because you emotionally know how that feels and how to get there. But it shed the light on that true version of you and your true life mission, and then you can do the work to actually get there.
That's very well said. I mean, it was in a journey that, I was asking questions like, what should I do next with my life? That's where it came to me that it was like, oh, you're done doing real estate. Like you need to do something different. It was in a journey because I would have never even probably even dared to have that thought, like not being in the medicine. And so it's just, but you say it so beautifully, but yeah, and it really is the work you do outside of it. Right. And one thing I like about, plant medicine is it's not addictive because you don't want, it's work. Like you don't want, my last ayahuasca was over almost 2 years ago now. And I've been invited multiple times and I'm like, nope,
Yeah, that's
gonna
heavy.
check in on that one. Nope, that's a no. It's really hard. It's like I'm doing a 4-day water fast right now, right? Apparently I'm just a glutton for pain. And I'm like sitting here, I'm like, this is work. Like I've had a headache for a day and a half now, you know. I'm like, I went to lunch with a friend and I had to just sit there and watch him eat like literally my favorite meal. I'm like, why did I even come to this lunch? But like doing those things obviously are not easy. They're work. It'd be like me telling somebody, dude, you want to do a 4-day water fast this weekend? And it's like, well, you're an idiot. Why would we do that? That doesn't sound fun at all. It's not. Same
Mhm,
thing with like ayahuasca. It's not
mhm,
fun, but you're so grateful you did it afterwards. It's like hiking, right? It's like
mhm.
nobody likes hiking. You like the feeling you get when you're done hiking. Like that's really the how I say these things. It's like it's work.
I agree. In fact, I had a good friend. He was a former Green Beret, went undercover with us in Ecuador, and I remember he came to me because he had seen some of my transition over the years and using some of these tools, and he said, Paul, he said, can I tell you something? He said, I love my wife and kids, but I don't feel anything.
Mm.
You know, I don't feel that it's super hard for me to really connect from an emotional level because this guy had led hundreds of missions, had killed lots of people. I mean, it had been and emotionally he had just
Of
blocked
course you'd
out
have to.
all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And his wife had been on anxiety and depression medication for years. He asked to come and join us on one of these transformational experiences and I remember that evening, you know, we were about 5, 6 hours into it. He came up to me with just tears in his eyes. And he said, Paul, he said, for the first time in my kid's life, I feel
Mm.
everything. I feel love for them and their love for me. I can let it in. It was beautiful just to see those walls come down that had been built up because of his own trauma. And you know, his wife is now off of medication and doesn't have anxiety issues anymore. So it's just beautiful. So, you know, I touch on that because for me, all of the success in the world, you know, the huge company and big house and, you know, beautiful wife at the time, all this stuff, it was not fulfilling. Even all the rescue, all the charity work we were doing, it was trying to fill this hole.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I went through that experience with my brothers that loved me enough to
Mm.
help me see what was going on that I was able to transform my life and get to the point where I could qualify for a healthy relationship with a woman who was healed. I didn't have to fix all these problems and stuff, and it was super beautiful in my life, and that's why I wanted to spend some time on it and honor you for being that kind of friend to help me through what no therapist could, you know. And so I want to thank you
Well, thank you.
for
No,
just
it's
being
I
that man.
think God puts people in our lives, and He for sure put you in my life, and vice versa. And one of the things that's kind of cool, I teach my guys this. I think so often we want to judge parts of our path, like, oh, I shouldn't have married that person because I wasted a year of my life, or I shouldn't have been in that phase of life when I was partying and all these different things. But they all kind of create this thing that we call life, and it's this big, beautiful mess, right? And I wouldn't be able to honestly have the empathy or understanding of my men if I hadn't been a little bit of a shit show myself. And I've never professed to be anything that I'm not, right? Like I've absolutely had times in my life where I was lost. But because of that, when guys come to me in different things, you at least understand where their head's at. I can understand what's going on. I have a little bit more empathy for what's happening. And so all the things, like all the moves that we make, I think too often we get in trouble in life when we have an expectation again of what our life is supposed to look like. And so I just like to say, like if you can just embrace it all as this big, beautiful mess, I don't have bad days anymore. I haven't had a bad day in a long time because I have learning days. I have days that are I'm like, geez, I wonder what's coming out of this. But I think when I needed my life to look a certain way, to think that I needed to be happy or that God would be happy with me, that's where all the pain came from. And when I was able to eliminate that and just kind of take this all in, it's just a life. And it doesn't mean it's easy, but it's pretty awesome. We get to experience all of it. And that I think for me is the lesson in all of this. Like all of us had to do what we were doing, or we had to lead us to the path that led us to where we're at today. And, to look back and judge that path, Tony Robbins says this all the time. He says, we're all doing the best we can with the information that we have. And that's the truth. At the time, I would have done better if I knew better, right? But I didn't. And to be able to use that knowledge now, I put a lot of these stories in my book that just came out, B1. because I want people, and I've had one guy that read it the other day. He said, I haven't read a book in 5 years, Jimmy. I've read this 3 times. He goes, you are speaking to my soul. So whatever that dude has been going through or is going through, like my experience. And what's cool about it, and I see this with my program too, is like, when you're in those painful moments, when you're in those times that suck or you're down or whatever else, you know, you it you I think what you're experiencing is you don't have purpose per se. Like maybe you don't see a future with what you're doing with your work or with your mission or with your family or whatever it might be. And that's what causes that pain. And so when you get on the other side of that and you help other people, then it gives purpose to all the pain you had. And I think it heals all of the pain that was experienced in that moment in real time. And I think that's the beauty of staying and continuing to find a path and having friends that'll keep you, as close as possible so that you can eventually get there. Because I've had these little moments in my program. I've had probably 20 of them. I call them these like perfect moments. And every time I have one, I'm like, everything else I did in my life that was wrong or that was, less than what I should have or whatever else, it doesn't matter because I'm here in this moment with this perfect moment in time. And it all led to this. And so it's just this honoring of like the present moment that we're in. And in that, you honor the path that got you there.
I love that.
Yeah. And that's also how I got peace around, like, leaving the Mormon church, for example. Like, it was so perfect. It had to be part of my story. It had to be part of all this. If it wasn't, I never would have got to be the person that I am today. And it was perfect for me till it wasn't. And each part of my life, even like, being single as long as I have and, the different relationships and all the different, people I've dated and things like that, it all led to this guy that now gets to do what I get to do today. And so as imperfect as he still is, it's like an honoring of this whole thing. And like, I've asked myself this question, I'll ask you the same one. I thought about this once. I was like, would I go back 5 years and do it over, not having any of the knowledge I did? I was like, no, I wouldn't, because I love how it's turned out. Would I go back 10 years? No. Would I go back 20 years? No. Like, I love how it's turned out. And so in that, you have to just accept all of it.
I love that. Yeah. I thought that same thing. I thought, there's a big mistake, but if I hadn't made it, I don't want to risk not
Correct,
being where I am. I'm so happy. I'm so happy. Happy with every part of my life is divine. And I'm still working on some things, my wife and I fight once in a while, but not, there's little things that come up that I'm still working on some things on myself to be that best version. And that's what life's all about. It's a journey. It's not a destination, so yeah, I appreciate that. I can honor myself for those mistakes, for the shit shows, for the, I remember so many experiences you and I had where you're like, Paul, oh my word, what are you doing? But you loved me through it. And I'm super grateful for that. And I do, I look back and I say, wow, if I hadn't been in that relationship, I don't think that I would have learned this and this, and I wouldn't be where I am today in my current one.
Yeah, so fair.
I love that. I've been thinking about this myself, about why is Jimmy not married yet? And here's my opinion of it. There's very few men on this earth that I respect as much as you. I mean, most guys, maybe they're successful here or here. I mean, you have absolutely become the pinnacle of what most guys aspire to be in so many areas. And so to find a woman to match that level of man, that's a
I'll change it a little bit for you.
Okay.
Because this is the truth. Okay. I know that there's a level that I'm supposed to be at that I'm not yet at. And the woman that I want wouldn't accept this version of me. And until I do that, she's just going to have to keep waiting for me.
So what is it you have to work on?
All sorts of things, right? Like, without going into huge details, but like part of, every one of us, I think, has like a blueprint, like a way that we're wired. And so my wiring, there's kind of like a perfect storm against me in some ways, you could say. And so I've been working through all those things, and it's up to me. The second I decide, it's going to happen. But ultimately, call it fear of like getting there or doing it, right? I grew up in a house that like there was so much love, but again, no depth. And so like, for example, my dad would, like start screaming or yelling at everybody or whatever it might turn into. And my mom was, bless her heart, she wasn't like the villain here. She was a victim too, but she was in survival mode. So nobody would ever come take care of us. And so from time I was little, even as an adult, like I never have been comfortable in relationships if the person's trying to take care of me and mother me. And so like I get bad anxiety. So I started working on this about a year ago. I hired in my opinion, the top relationship coach in the country, a guy named Stefanos out of Austin, Texas. I just saw all this stuff. I was like, man, this guy gets it. And we did a lot of deep work, helping me be more comfortable accepting feminine love. And like when women like try to give to me, it's always felt wrong to me. And so I'll get in relationships with women that can't hurt me because they are just they're in survival mode, like they're at shit shows or whatever it might be. And so I always gravitated that for literally for my whole adult life, because that's what feels comfortable to my system. When I get with a healthy woman, I've had several try to love me, but every time I don't like it. It feels wrong. It's like, why does a battered woman go back to the guy? Well, they know they can survive that. And so unfortunately, it's not your body, your ego and all that stuff. It's protecting you. It's not trying to figure out what's going to make you the most happy. It's trying to figure out where you feel safe, and kind of goes back to what I said. And so I think in my case, I've been working really hard. So last year I started doing a lot of things to calm my nervous system, to kind of sit with it. And so twice a week, I go into nature for 2 hours and I'll just sit, no phone, nothing. I'll take a few days at a time without my phone and just have to sit there and do nothing by myself. I start meditating every day. In fact, I meditated about an hour before I got here, 20 minutes, just complete. It took me 7 years of trying to meditate for 20 minutes before I could get through it. Not even joking. Like that's how whacked up my nervous system was, right? And so I'm working on these things, and ultimately, there's still decisions I need to make. There's still fears that I need to get over to be able to get myself where I need to be so that I can attract in that person that will accept the higher version of me. And so, it's not that there's no woman on my level. It's that I'm not on the level of the woman that is waiting for me. How's that?
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I've seen so many beautiful changes in you in the last 5+ years as we've been, we started with the charity work together and then the healing side of things. And it's been super cool to see. And I'm really excited to see that next step in your life. And sometime, I'm pushing. You can wait.
Yeah,
till
no,
it's I waited until I was 50 years old to find my perfect match.
And look, everything in life has trade-offs, right? Like being single has trade-offs. You don't have a spouse. You don't have somebody to build that future with. Being married has trade-offs, right? You don't have certain things you have when you're single.
Yeah.
I'm wired funny in the sense that I took a test one time, and it's a Tony Robbins test of the 6 human needs. And I am off the charts on my need for variety. So, okay, in that, like, that's how you end up with 30 best friends. That's how you end up I've been to 109 countries. That's how you end up dating a lot of different people, right? Like, I have to overcome that natural instinct to always want the new thing. Mm-hmm. And it's really fear, though. It's like there's the fear of like the certainty and going deeper. Tony Robbins has this. If you go to I actually paid and went to his platinum member relationship course in Maui in October. And he takes you through these stages of a relationship. And stage 1 is, it's all the good feelings, the chemicals are pouring in, you're in love, you're Twitter pated, all that. And I was looking at this, and just being honest, Paul, like I've never got past level 1. Like it's kind of embarrassing, but level 2 is where you start to figure out that you're not perfect, and you start to like have to deal with people's different values and different opinions and things like that. And so, yeah, there is a obvious, it's the thing that I know, and it's not that I feel like I need to be married to be complete, because that's the opposite of what you want. Mm-hmm. But it's like there's a level to this game that I can't play in until I figure that out, until I decide to do that. And so in the meantime, I keep dating, I keep doing my thing, and it is like there's a couple other things. It's like honestly, like for me, it's it is easy to go find the next person to date. It is fun to go out and try all these different crazy things, Mm-hmm. And so, I think a lot of people, I think 70% of people probably marry the first attractive person that really likes them back in their adult life. Like that's probably how it goes. And it just was never going to be me. And so anyway, it's been beautiful. Cool. And it's been like the gift of my life to try, because honestly, I don't think I ever would have got into self-development if I'd have found my person right off the bat, because in my pain of being single, of going, all right, like I need to switch something, I had enough self-awareness to go, I'm the problem. Like I've always known I'm the problem. It's not all them. Like I need to fix something. And in that, I've been to all the seminars and courses and coaches and everything else. That's what drove me, was that pain of like not being able to find my person, right? And so the gift in that is I now get to teach all those things I learned to all these other men. And I never would have become me, this version of me, if I had gotten married in my 20s or even 30s. So I think there's the gift in all of it. And it's like, I think I kind of do feel like God just kind of guides my course. And so I kind of accept it, and it works.
I love how freaking humble you are about that. You're like, no,
Well,
I
there's
got to
no
work on
choice. I
shit.
mean, it's a fact. I just have not figured out that game, and
But yeah.
I at least have looked at it from every angle and gone, okay, here's some things to look at and some things I get to work on, and I know like the things that I'm not doing that I need to. It's like, oh yeah, like it's me standing at the top of a cliff, not jumping. Like I'm scared to do it, and so ultimately, I have to push past that eventually.
I'm similar to you in that way where I absolutely love variety, and that's, been a blessing and a curse in my life. And I think God realized that, I needed some help. My goal after my last marriage, I was going to date 1,000 girls. I thought, oh, that's a great idea. Jimmy said that was a very great idea.
That's
I'm
not
gonna
a
be,
great idea.
so I was going to go down that road, and God said, no, I've got some bigger things for you. And he put Vanessa in my path. And now I wasn't healed at the time. I was on the way. I had started some of the work, but I wasn't healed. And it was a beautiful blessing to have somebody who could help me become the man that I wanted to be. Most guys get married to a woman hoping that she'll never change, and the woman she's hoping the man will change everything,
Hmm.
right? That she can change him. And that never works. You're not gonna, but you can create an environment allowing somebody to choose to change. And what's beautiful about our relationship is that she loves to, I mean, we can in one day just decide, okay, we're going to China tomorrow. I mean, it's super
Yeah.
spontaneous. We're never bored, and we do everything together. But she loved me through my growth
Mm.
to become the man that, that I wanted to be when I first met her, that now I'm hopefully still on that path towards.
Yeah, I mean, we never fully heal or fully arrive, right, or anything like that. But I have seen her. I've seen you. We were down in Jamaica last year, and you got really mad at her, and in general. And I remember watching the way that she handled you, and she just held you, and you were ready to fight, and she just was no, and she just held you and was like, "Hey, tell me what's really going on." It was so beautiful to watch. She was just like, "No." And you were trying to get her off you, and she's like, "No." And she just loved you and held you and allowed you to get into like what was going on. And you got triggered because of past relationships, and you were able to talk about it. And something that literally would have wrecked your entire trip a couple years earlier, you two were over it in 15 minutes. And you were closer than ever. And it was like, damn, that was beautiful to watch.
Yeah.
I honor her for that because it was one of the most beautiful things. It was like every man, all they need is a woman that truly believes in them, supports them, respects them. But the guy has to be respectable and it has to be worthy of that. But if the woman can do that and she's healed enough, which, your wife is, then she can literally take a monster in that moment and turn him into a little puppy dog.
Yeah, she's brilliant in that way, and so grateful, so grateful. And that's why I wouldn't change anything of the past, because I'm
Right.
so happy
Well, and by the way,
with.
it's like it's not like you waste those years if you're in a different relationship. It's not like you wasted those years if you weren't married. It's like, no, you just did life differently.
Uh-huh.
And like most people, I think the worst place to be is stuck in a relationship, right? Like I've never been stuck in anything in my life because I can't be stuck for 10 minutes before I'm like, I'm out. Like I'm willing to start over, whatever that is. At the peak of my real estate career, I just went, I'm going and doing this whole different thing. Like I have no fear in doing that. But I think for a lot of people, it's that going back to that feeling stuck. I mean, that's about as bad as you can hope for. But even in that, whatever, but I just never want to look back on my life and regret, not making a move when you know that you need to or something like that. And I think for all of us, we can just look at everything in our life and just go, yeah, it's just all part of it. It's
Yeah.
just, it's not right. It's not wrong. It's just part of it.
And it's just to reiterate how grateful I am for our relationship, and the amazing stories. And we could go on for 2 hours just on undercover ops and what happened there, and what we learned and what we saw and the compassion behind it. But the truth is the work that you're doing now in helping men to heal, I believe, is making a greater impact in the lives of children than all the ops that we ever did. And I honor you for that, and for the impact that you had in my life. And I'm just super grateful for you, for our friendship. And you want to say anything to the audience before we?
Yeah. Well, first I'll
close
say
out?
thank you back to you. I mean, like I said this a couple times during the podcast, but one of the most pivotal moments of my entire life was meeting you that first time. And so many of this, all this stuff and this purpose and everything I get to do now, none of it's happening without our relationship and that first thing. I really needed to go through all that. And so thank you for taking a chance on a little punk kid that just wanted to, go and play James Bond on the weekend. But it was such a beautiful thing. I have such fond memories of our time undercover and all the rescues and all the things we did. And and even with the stuff that came out last year with, OUR and all these other things, it didn't taint any of that for me. I was there. I was in the room. I saw what happened. And so for me, they're just sacred memories and moments and help me become who I am. So thank you.
I honor you.
Likewise. Thanks, Paul.
Good man. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Liberating Humanity. Hopefully you enjoyed this as much as I did. I absolutely love this man. Please like and subscribe and share. And together, we will make the world a better place and a safer place for our children. Thanks for joining us.